In Clarksdale, police are investigating after a 15-year-old was found dead. One local, though, says children, they need more positive activities to help them keep out of trouble.
They don't have any youth centers or nothing like that. I mean, how many basketball courts do you see around here? There's nowhere for these kids to go. They don't have nothing to do but hang out on the corners.
It hit all us when it's a child, and he still had a lot of living to do. And unfortunately, his mother now, they're grieving and they got to bury him.
Clarksdale High, the school that Foster attended, released a statement saying they were saddened by the loss.
Clarksdale is a city of blues forefathers and urban legends. With the record high temperatures from May to September, it's a living museum for the pilgrimage of the blues, a portal into tension and release, a city of troubled memories, racism, and human cruelty. The wounds of displacing Native Americans, cotton field slavery, and the exodus for many as the Delta's region's work opportunities eroded. It's a land of heavy energy, the birthplace of John Lee Hooker, the hometown of Muddy Waters, and the crossroads for Robert Johnson, who made his deal with the devil. With the media's historic tales of Led Zeppelin and the occult, walking into Clarksdale seems like an alternate timeline or prequel to the Swan Song drama. The album cover is disturbing, a child with wings or a fallen angel next to a sedated friend and brother. The backdrop contains a deafening question with the color purple, which ties in with the cotton fields of Clarksdale. In some cultures, purple is the color of evil and forbidden magic. Since my early days of Zeppelin studies, the record had a bad reputation. Critics and fans called it an afterthought, unnecessary jamming, a second-hand grunge album, and the worst thing since Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. I saw it in record stores for years, but always passed on. Many times in the discount bin and used CD categories, walking into Clarksdale looked menacing, disquieting, a bad omen of a 90s partnership walking into its final year together. I heard the album at some point in my early 20s, but I can't remember when. For a guy like me with synesthesia, the album cover just doesn't reflect the music to the point of songs feeling trapped in a sort of prison or curse. However, its historical significance cannot be overlooked. This is the first and only Page and Plan album comprised of all original material. It was also the first time since Into the Outdoor that both Jimmy and Robert went into the studio for more than 2 songs. And just to go obsessive compulsive here, it's the first time since the 1975 sessions for Presence that these guys actually sat down and wrote new material. That's 22 years later. Not counting the Honey Drippers collab, which had them play on 2 covers, their original material stats for 1997 had 1 for Outrider and Now and Zen, plus the 3 new tracks from Unledded, as Wawa was technically an adaptation of a local Moroccan theme by the name of Saye Meshel. I hope I pronounced the name right. Check it out. So we have a total of 5 Page and Plan songs since 1980. For all the fans who complain about Unledded's take on Zeppelin, walking into Clarksdale was a one-of-a-kind chance at songwriting with nothing to compare it to. Their best post-Led Zeppelin songs were recorded with other people. This was Page and Plan's real debut as an artistic duo, with no safety nets of MTV Unplugged nor Zeppelin revival stuff. This was a real test for their chemistry and creative juice. Past the John Paul Jones phone number beef and avoiding reunion expectations, this was their chance at honoring the so-called musical evolution and premise of Unledded that ended up being a Zeppelin-only setlist by 1996. This album had a different set of expectations, and they knew it. In the same way this 1990 series made me revisit Unledded after almost 20 years, Spinning Walking into Clarksdale has been a journey into a record I didn't hold a grudge against, nor associated with any particular emotion. Listening to these songs with the willingness of a dedicated documentarian gave me valuable information for the never-ending questions on the album. Is it that bad? Is it an underrated masterpiece? A waste of time? Does it need to be forgotten? The answer will come to you at last. This is the making of Walking into Clarksdale.
Also, thank you, my friends, for finally remembering my phone number. Thank you. Bye-bye.
was the exclusion of John Paul Jones an obvious sort of...
Shut up. No. An obvious. Oh, it don't matter. It's just that Jonesy was busy and we're busy.
This is CNN Headline News. I'm David Goodnow in Atlanta. This is one of those days people will tell their children and grandchildren about. NASA's Pathfinder sent back the first photos from Mars since 1976. The pictures should reveal more about the red planet's terrain and help in planning future missions.
Wendy's 99-cent crispy chicken nuggets are very hard to resist.
Where are my nuggets? Oh, I think Dave took them.
Where's my nugget? Dave.
Wendy's crispy chicken nuggets, 5 juicy pieces of all white meat. Just one of the 10 delicious choices on Wendy's 99-cent super value menu.
Who ate my nuggets?
Tô perguntando para ele a respeito das músicas do Led Zeppelin. Which one you feel more comfortable, or you feel comfortable in everyone?
Which one do I feel more comfortable with?
Tentaram dar uma resumidinha e o público respondeu muito bem, incluindo até Immigrant Song. Ele ficou sabendo que uma das bandas de abertura também tocou Immigrant Song. I suppose that you were playing, you're supposed to play like Moby Dick.
Well, we kind of hint at the end of A Whole Lot of Love. We worked that out on the drive on the way over here. We might do Kashmir one day.
Kashmir, that's a great tune. Tava perguntando pra ele se ele ia tocar Moby Dick, que é o grande solo do pai dele. Falou assim que eles chegaram a pensar ali no caminho daqui, tentaram emendar ali no final de Whole Lotta Love, mas só foi pedaço.
The Brazilian people, my father never came here, and I just felt...
That's great, man. Perguntei pra ele a respeito da plateia brasileira, ele ficou totalmente emocionado, falou que no show chorou, falou que o pai dele nunca veio aqui, mas simplesmente ele pôde representar o pai dele.
I love you all.
You are the man. Falou, agradeceu a todo mundo e mandou também, disse que o ama todo mundo.
Thanks for making me feel so, I don't know, I'm speechless. Thank you for this.
Tá sem palavras.
Best show I've ever done.
Really?
Yes.
That's really good to know, man.
So before we delve into walking into Clarksdale, let's take a look at what the other post-Led Zeppelin characters were up to in 1997. The Jason Bonham Band embarked on a heavy dose of Led Zeppelin with tours in both the USA and South America, keeping them busy throughout the year. They also released a studio album called When You See the Sun in July 1997. Is the album worth checking out? I would say so, but I suggest ignoring the vocals if possible, as they make the listening experience feel like staring at the sun for more than 3 seconds, or playing Meatloaf's entire Bat Out of Hell album. However, Jason's strumming is massive here, with a powerful snare punch and an impactful bass drum. He doesn't take any shortcuts when it comes to the groove. The rest of the band consists of Tony Catania on guitars, John Smithson on bass and keyboards, and Chas West on vocals. I believe this was West's first studio experience, and it shows. While he had the power, the vocal melodies and phrasing are the weakest aspect of the album. The record was produced by Marty Fredriksson, who was the lead vocalist on Jason's Peace for Me project. Bonham and Fredriksson are credited as the songwriters on all tracks, with Tony Catania co-writing 8 songs. The first track, When You See the Sun, sounds like a mix of Immigrant Song with Nirvana, along with featured Black Country Communion vibes. Track 2, Drowning Me, is a Zeppelin-inspired blend of Arabian vibes, hard rock intentions, and Catania's guitar work as a result of the Jimmy Page University. Track 3 features a drum intro for Jamaica, followed by the actual song, and there's also a small sample from When the Levee Breaks at the end, a paying tribute to John Bonham. Tracks 4 and 5 continue the post-grunge explorations, and while the instrumental chops are great, one can't help but wish they had a different singer. These tracks remind me of what Velvet Revolver would do. Tracks 6 to 10 are filled with 90s mid-tempo crunch that grooves hard. Tony Catania is locked in with Bonham and Smithson. While Chas West did a great job with Zeppelin covers live, he is not a memorable singer on this album. It's a shame that such a vibrant sounding record is hindered by this major inconvenience. Track 11, The Unknown, is a short instrumental passage reminiscent of 70s prog rock transitions. The stuff is quite good. Track 12 closes the album with a Kashmir-inspired intro, signature Bonham drums, and Page-inspired guitars. Like some songs from Jason's previous albums, the songwriting problems arise when they reach the pre-chorus and chorus sections. It ends up resulting in a soup of 90s grunge attempts and cliché vocal hooks. The best song from the record is track 1. Will I ever revisit this album beyond this documentary? No, but you can go ahead and check it out. It has a nice green cover.
The Mitsubishi Eclipse Spider GST. Vorrei del pane tostato.
Vorrei del pane tostato.
The perfect way to express yourself in any language. Dove sono le valigie?
Dove sono le valigie?
Buon gusto, sei bella e parli italiano.
Buon toast, vorrei una fetta de valigie. Ciao.
The 1997 Eclipse Spider and Coupe, Mirage and 3000 GT, the family of sports cars from Mitsubishi.
And my music is much more flesh and blood, you know, unnecessary camouflage, all of the things that went on. But it was very successful, and I make no excuses. That was then. I almost had a nervous breakdown in 1990, which is why I stopped. I will never allow that to happen again. My life is too important. My family is too important.
Whitesnake's ninth studio album, Restless Heart, was released in March 1997. Originally planned as a David Coverdale solo album, label pressures turned it into a Whitesnake project. Some discarded ideas from the Coverdale Page era were eventually recorded as Woman Trouble Blues and Take Me Back Again, which have a distinct Jimmy Page influence. It's a shame they never pursued a follow-up album. Restless Heart is an intriguing what-if scenario, as it features the same rhythm section from a 1993 Japanese tour, including Denny Carmassi on drums, Guy Pratt on bass, and Brett Tuggle on keyboards. Adrian Vandenberg does an exceptional job on guitar. The song Crying sounds like a fusion of Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. The album's cover art direction was done by Hugh Syme, who also worked on Coverdale Page.
Because this is the pepperoni all of America's talking about. And why not? It's meatier, crispier. We never had a pepperoni like this before. No one has.
After disbanding in 1993, 3 surviving members of the original Echo and the Bunnymen returned in 1997. Their 7th studio album, Evergreen, was recorded January to March, with a release date of July 14, 1997. Personnel on the album included none other than both Unledded's Michael Lee on drums for all songs and Ed Shermer on piano for one track. The London Metropolitan Orchestra was also credited for strings, and yes, they also played on the Unledded sessions. Echo and the Bunnymen went on a 60-day tour of Europe and North America. It was another touring year for Michael Lee, who revisited some Page and planned venues, such as Glastonbury. Charlie Jones and Michael Lee joined forces again for Quietly Torn, a 1997 EP by none other than Paul Thompson, you know, the guy from The Cure who played with Page and Plant on the 1995 tour. This short-lived project was not released to a label. There seems to be just one song on YouTube. I heard it and it sounds very indie rock, a nice document of intimate emotions. Sessions for Walking into Clarksdale began in August 1997 at Abbey Road Studios, London. Jimmy Page resorted to his private life hideaway in Brazil since January, and Robert Plant was pretty much absent from the media, with no live performances for the first time since 1981. Often overlooked in articles about this time period, I believe this had a direct impact on Walking into Clarksdale. Robert faced another tragic chapter in his life. His mother, Annie Celia Plant, passed away at the age of 77 in September 1997. It's quite logical to understand why the Abbey Road sessions ended this same month. While we certainly don't know the circumstances of Mrs. Plant's health before her passing, I can imagine it was a very sad time for Robert. Recording new songs with Jimmy Page was not his emotional priority. The timing was wrong and his despair is palpable in the songs. This brings the question, when were these tracks actually written? Let's go back to the 1994 Japanese press conference where Robert stated how besides the 4 new tracks for Unledded, they had more songs on the back burner. We could speculate these sketches were on standby for 2 years past their 1995 and 1996 world tours. With a bag full of demos in just 1 month of studio time, the minimum overdub, one-take-only vibe of Walking to Clarksdale feels somewhat rushed. If there was something all Robert Plant's solo releases had up to that point, was sound design, attention to detail, and hands-on production. Clarksdale was the exact opposite of this, almost like a BBC session type of thing. Robert's solo career had now stalled into revivalism. He isolated the artist within. His mother's passing as they finished the album had a strange echo to 1977. Sometimes we never recover from grief. The album personnel had Page and Plant joined by Charlie Jones and Michael Lee, alongside Unledded's own Ed Shermer on programming and string pads. Keyboardist Linton Nave came in as an arranger. He was a member of a British jazz rock band by the name of Affinity in the late 60s, as well as session musician throughout the 70s. Fun fact, Robert Plant's 66 to Timbuktu compilation credits Linton Nave as string arranger for the Honey Dripper Sea of Love and the song If It's Really Got to Be This Way from a 1994 Arthur Alexander tribute album. Tim Whalen was brought in as additional keyboardist. Sound engineer Steve Albini was chosen for the album. A musician himself with a long association to the punk movement, a rebel that followed his muse, he had a long list of studio works as engineer. Most notable, Nirvana's dark sounding and disturbing record, In Utero. His approach to mixing had a clear influence from his personal experiences on stage, but it has to be said, contrary to the urban myth that blames him for the production of Walking into Clarksdale, he was actually credited for engineering, mixing, and recording technician. The album was produced by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, so the end result was nobody's fault but them.
There would have been things that I would have been expected to have done overnight. Like on their way out at the end of a session, they'd be like, okay, we need a rough mix of this. I want to hear this take of that guitar solo, but moved into that take of the song. And they wouldn't always ask to listen to it the next day, but if they did ever ask to listen to anything that they had requested, and I hadn't done it, I would have been fired on the spot. They didn't work on Sundays. They often gave me chores to execute over the weekend. John Bonham, widely regarded as the greatest rock drummer of all time, I think he's totally underrated. A landmark musician, you know. Right. And the same with Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, you know. And Robert Plant, as irritating as his vocal style could be, there's something about a dude that's just so completely convinced of his greatness. Lunch would be on the session, breakfast was on me, lunch was on the session, and dinner was on me.
Gear-wise, it seems Jimmy used a Vox AC30 as his main amp, with his Les Paul, a 12-string electric guitar, and a Telecaster B-Bender as main instruments, plus the acoustic work. Contrary to the Unledded studio album and tours, Charlie Jones's bass has a stronger presence here. While he still sounds a bit thin, it complements Jimmy's work much better than past years. Michael Lee's drums have a different mixing style throughout the record. His high-pitched snare sound is much appreciated on the slow stuff, but then it's underwhelming when Jimmy's guitar goes up to 11. The hard rock material needs more bass drum frequencies up front to elevate Robert's dry-sounding vocals, which ends up being one of the main sonic problems of the album. You see, I believe they went for a presence approach, but then you need the drums to provide the right backdrop for Plant. Zeppelin Production 101. I also noticed the slow sections are Robert's spotlight with some minor effects applied on his voice. Once the volume goes up, the effects are gone and the vocals drown. They get lost in the mix. 2 songs, Shining in the Light and Burning Up, were recorded at RAK Studios London. The rest was done at Abbey Road Studio No. 2. Here's a track-by-track review of all 12 songs on Walking into Clarksdale. All songs are credited to Page, Plant, Lee, and Jones. Shining in the Light starts off the record with a mixing style reminiscent of the famous Swan Song demo from Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti sessions. Michael Lee's drums following the acoustic guitar accents is a nice tribute to John Bonham. Robert's vocals do remind me of the Houses of the Holy Spirit for some reason. Besides his guitar duties, Jimmy Page played well-executed mellotron lines as transition element with Charlie Jones's cycling bass work holding the bouncing effect steady. Robert's phrasing is quite strange, with lyrics about wanting somebody back and the shining light as the infinite dimension for lasting memories. Track 2, When the World Was Young, is the career blueprint for all Robert Plant's post-2000 solo work. Whispered vocals next to minimalistic guitar tension and release. Page played a B-bender for the call and response effect, an exquisite mix with Plant's vocals making use of a slight room reverb. With a catchy chorus, this is a modern classic, a cry for eternal help juxtaposed against the inevitable Father Time. This is my favorite song from the album. Track 3, Upon a Golden Horse, starts off with a When the Levee Breaks inspired rhythm motif to then cut into a familiar chord progression. Yes, it's the same from the middle section of Carouselambra that these guys feature on their 1995 live renditions of In the Evening. Plant's dry sounding vocals are a production misstep. I wish they added some effects on his voice. The highlight of the song was of course the sublime crescendos of the orchestral arrangement by Linton Nave, quite the evolution in the style of Kashmir. This is worth listening just for the string section alone, going into progressive rock. Track 4, Blue Train, is another post-2000 Robert Plant solo career sonic blueprint. Jimmy's graceful guitar work reminds me of Band of Joy's Silver Rider from 2010, one of Robert's finest moments from the album. His lyrics speak of grief, losing a loved one, suspended animation poetry. A small Led Zeppelin motif in the style of Thank You can be heard on each verse. The transition to the hard rock section is not very subtle and kinda takes away the mystery of what began as a very intimate experience. Track 5. Please read the letter. The strongest part of the song is a downward chord section reminiscent of What Is It One Should Never Be and Sick Again. This gives Plant the chance to sing a catchy hook and chorus line. The track was reworked for 2007's Racing Sand album to a great effect. I seriously recommend checking out this version with Alison Krauss, as it removes the clutter and saves the song with a mix that sounds fresh to this day. Track 6, Most High. This is most definitely a song that was written during the early Unledded drum loop sessions of 1994. Everything here is reminiscent of that specific mood, from Egyptian sounding keyboard lines to open chord guitar drones. It features exciting vocals by Plant, but it does sound a bit dated by 1997 standards after touring the world with the Egyptian pharaohs. This should have been on Unledded. Track 7, Heart in Your Hand, the third song that sounds like Robert Plant's future solo career endeavors. My many times revisiting Walking into Clarksdale confirmed my suspicions. There is a Robert Plant solo album within this Page and Plant collaboration that signals where Plant would go from Dreamland on. This is a wonderful cut worth revisiting.
Do you gather flowers for me, moving softly through the trees?
Track 8, Walking into Clarksdale. A great intro motif, but it lacks direction and purpose. It dances between opposing moods. The problem here is repetition on the verses, and a return to a similar chord progression found on track 3. Towards the end, Jimmy takes over with a great display of lead and rhythm guitar work. Next song, Burning Up, sounds like a reprise of the previous number for some reason. The open jam vibe of this type of composition makes it forgettable. It works live on stage, but not for an album experience. I'm still not sure what to think about it.
Yeah, there's a new one, it's called Burning Up.
Track 10, When I Was a Child, is a soul number at heart, with Jimmy's clever use of the tremolo effect to guide the song into forever. Robert's vocals are too dry sounding, but the honest and unguarded approach is much appreciated. The song faces a similar issue like Blue Train. Once things go heavy, the magic is somewhat gone.
I was walking with a stranger. He left without a trace.
Track 11, House of Love, is more open jam stuff next to what sounds like a distorted drum loop. I can think this was discarded from the Unledded sessions as well. The second part of the song is an interesting guitar lyric construction with Jimmy echoing some of his Death Wish and Outrider sentiments. It comes as no surprise Robert reworked the lyrics and music of this number for his 2014 Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar album.
Okay, here's a song called House of Love.
Track 12, Sons of Freedom, starts off with a riff that is sure similar to some of the John Paul Jones's legendary stuff on Zuma. Go back and check it out, you'll see what I mean. Charlie Jones's aggressive bass work and Michael Lee's frenetic drum grooves are the album's rhythm section highlight, no question. While this sounds like another open jam tune, it works much better because it challenges the listener, taking the road less traveled into experimentation. The Japanese edition of the album featured a bonus track in the ways of Whiskey from the Glass. It sounds like a heavily distorted version of Unledded's Nobody's Fault But Mine, a sort of modern hats off to Roy Harper with a commanding mid-tempo drum beat. A nice sonic addition to the record. No concert tour was scheduled for 1997 past the album's completion, but Page and Plant did play a special charity show with Charlie Jones and Michael Lee. This was the last time Over the Hills and Far Away was ever performed by Page and Plant. Jimmy's new look and Plant's return to the stage since Australia 1996 shows a four-piece band at the mercy of expectations and the continuum of seasons morphing into a question of being. The stripped-down version of this band compared to Unledded is an interesting spectacle. Long gone the Egyptian Fellows, symphonic arrangements, and the once-in-a-lifetime feel of the Led Zeppelin frontmen reuniting. The thrill was gone, and the real challenge began. Could the magic continue in the last part of the 90s?
So darling, 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 walk the world with me. Oh, you've got so much. Things come true, so much.
Walking into Clarksdale was released on April 20th, 1998, right after Page and Plant's first leg of 10 European shows. By the way guys, don't worry, I will cover the entire 1998 tour on a separate video. Atlantic Records pushed the record via Ticketmaster for those who attended the 1988 tour. With the advertising machine behind them, I believe the choice of singles for the album was a mistake. Let me explain. Both Shining in the Light and Most High had great dynamics, yes, but a closer look reveals why maybe this effort lost momentum. Shining in the Light sounded like other 90s alternative rock bands at the time, and Most High carried the vibes from Unledded, which sent the wrong signal to record buyers. Walking into Clarksdale was not Unledded Part 2. Despite an artistic video for Most High, it made it seem as if these guys were still riding the 1994 wave. This polarized Zeppelin fans who already hated Unledded, and was an underwhelming experience for the Unledded crowd that expected some sort of songwriting evolution from Page and Plant. A different choice of singles would have given this album a much better chance at standing out. Think When the World Was Young and Blue Train. Now those are two great singles that give a better idea of what the album was really about. The Robert Plant solo career sounding mellow tracks was the way to go, but no, they went for familiarity and comfort to some extent. Now the problem with Walking into Clarksdale is how much the songs sound similar to each other. It's hard to promote the sameness. The songs remain the same, I guess. Martin Kallman designed the album cover for Walking into Clarksdale. Yeah, the same guy from Fate of Nations surpassed himself in the crappy covers category. Walking into Clarksdale sold 560,000 copies, which is less than half of Unledded in record sales numbers. It's also just 60,000 units more than both Jimmy's Outrider and Robert's Shaken and Stirred from 1995. From a business standpoint, it was a commercial failure, but their 96 concert date tour of 1998 definitely compensated for its shortcomings. It is worth noting that they played 8 songs from the album on tour. The promotional efforts were made, but the songs just didn't stick in the mind of the consumer. I know you guys have asked me in the past for my opinion on the record, so what is the bottom line here? Is it good? Is it bad? Should you throw it away? Should it be called Walking into Meatloaf? Before I give you my final score, let me just say that if you're into Robert Plant's post-2007 discography, you'll rediscover Walking into Clarksdale as a predictive and prophetic solo album, a pivotal moment in Robert's quest for reinvention. As someone who greatly appreciates Plant's latter period works, I think Walking into Clarksdale is a swan song of his rockstar persona into finding himself very much in the same place of Pictures at 11 after Into the Outdoor. Once you see this angle, you forget it's Jimmy Page on guitar, and I mean this in a good way because you ditch the Zeppelin expectations to enjoy the storytelling as one big picture. Also, this perspective makes the 1988 tour quite a bizarre event in contrast to the vulnerable exploration of Walking into Clarksdale. Robert Plant leaving the project was quite predictable and understandable. The only way to get his solo career back was to leave the Jimmy Page Association and take himself to the highest places of congruency. Now for a shock, I really like all the songs from the album except Shining in the Light and Most High. Yeah guys, I know you're probably gonna hate me for this, but I find the music on Shining in the Light to be dangerously happy sometimes. Instrument and vocals are conceptually disjointed. Most High is most unnecessary and most late in 1997, Like I said, this is unleaded material. Yes, it's catchy, but I think after going over so many shows from the 1995 and 1996 tour on my previous episodes, I'm done. There's nothing new here, just the same formula. Everything else on the album fits a light and shade storytelling that Robert managed to deliver with the innocence of his early day solo career ventures. If Page stole the show on the Unledded travels, Walking into Clarksdale is one of Robert Plant's most underrated works. Maybe the mixing choices are questionable, but the end result proves to be a personal catharsis towards reclaiming the muse, light, and freedom. What Robert Plant did past the 90s was to set the controls to John Paul Jones himself, like a mighty rearranger racing sand, going for the lullaby and ceaseless roar to carry the fire. What Walking into Clarksdale did for Robert Plant was raise the roof into the future. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the next episode as we go into 1998. Bye-bye.